Hey everyone, Joey here, and today we're going to be doing a setup guide for MelonDualDS, the Nintendo DS emulator for Android. You are not going to need a PC for any part of today's guide. MelonDualDS has been through a ton of updates, so my last video on it is out of date, and so we're back here today with a new video to get you up and running. I'm going to be using my AYN Thor for today's guide, which is a dual screen Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 device. Makes it absolutely perfect for MelonDualDS. Now, MelonDualDS can run on a lot of devices, but it is heavier than you would expect, so low-end and mid-range devices may struggle a little bit here. You are going to need ROMs for today's guide. ROMs are games, and for many reasons, I can't help you with how or where to get them. Now, Nintendo DS ROMs are either in a zip or NDS format, either of which are perfectly fine to be used here. As for organizing these files, I would create a ROMs folder on your device or SD card if you have one connected, and then create an NDS folder, and you want to put all of your games inside of it. Now, if you want to play any DSiWare games, which is optional, you will also need the BIOS files for DS and DSi. BIOS files are system files that MelonDualDS needs to run DSiWare games. We're going to cover all of this in a later section as not many people care about DSiWare games. Once again, all of this can be done directly on your Android device just using any file manager and any web browser. There is a lot of versions of MelonDS out there, but the best one is the MelonDualDS fork by Sapphire Rhodonite on GitHub. It is the most up-to-date, has the most features, and it is the only version that I would recommend and support for both dual and single screen devices. Now, normally I would say not to install pre-release versions, but there has been massive updates to MelonDualDS through the pre-release. And at the time of this video, there's been no stable release in a little bit, so we are going to go with the most recent pre-release version. As of today, it is 0.7.0 release candidate 4. So in the future, just grab whatever stable release comes after this, just to stay up to date. So what you want to do is head to the Assets section and download the APK file. All of this will be in the description, and anything I talk about today will be in the description. But again, in the future, stick to stable releases for anything after 0.7.0. Go ahead and open the APK and install the app, and then open the app. The very first thing that it's asking for is for you to select your ROMs directory. And once again, ROMs is just another name for games. So it's asking, where are your Nintendo DS games located? Well, we did this earlier. They're on our internal storage or SD card, the ROMs folder, and then the NDS folder, so select that. You should now see them all populate inside of MelonDualDS. You can also filter your games if you want by favorites, DS, DSiWare, or RetroAchievements. Just long press any game to add them to favorites. But first, let's go to the three dots top right and then settings. Then head into general. The only change that I make here is fast forward max speed. Basically, if you leave this as unlimited and you have a very powerful device, when you use fast forward, it could be way too fast. So I like to cap this to 3x. This is up to you. It is a personal preference thing, and it is only really needed for very powerful devices. Back out and into the ROM section. And if you prefer seeing your games in a list instead of a grid, you can make that change here. Otherwise, there's no reason to touch anything else. Back out and into save files, and this is important. By default, all of your game saves will be generated next to your ROM files, so in that same NDS folder that we created earlier. If you want that, then no need to change anything here. But I prefer having a separate folder with all of my save files inside of it, so that's what I'm going to set up. To do that, uncheck Save Next to ROM File, and now click Save File Directory, and I like to create a folder just called MelonDualDS, either on my internal storage or my SD card if I have one. Then select Use this folder. Now, all of my saves and state files will be generated into that folder. I also like to enable use.srm save extension, as that makes my save files compatible with RetroArch if I ever want to move them or maybe grab some save files off the internet. You can also choose where your save state files get generated. I leave them in the same save file directory where my save files are, but if you want to change that, you can. Lastly, there is 2 additional options here to automatically save a state on exit of a game and automatically load into state on launch of a game. I wouldn't suggest these as a new beginner, but you can use them if you want to get quickly into and out of a game. Back out. Let's head into video. MelonDualDS, as of this video, has Vulkan support for a renderer, but it is still early days. I do imagine that this will be the default option in the future, but I would suggest that new users just use OpenGL for now, unless you want to play around with Vulkan, and you know what you're doing. Vulkan does have some benefits though, that we're going to cover later in the video. You can also set the internal resolution for upscaling, and this is going to depend on your device's power. I do like 3x for my AYN Thor, but you can go all the way up to 8x if you wanted to. Just lower this if games aren't running well. We can also adjust both of these on a per game basis later, so it's good to just set a good baseline here for all games to run, and then adjust games later on a per game basis. If you want to use shaders, click Filter and choose one of the built-in shaders. Or you can use RetroArch Shaders, but that's a bit more complicated and we'll cover that later. Next up, we have dual screen presets, and this is for anybody that's using a dual screen device. Otherwise, you can ignore it. So for AYN Thor users, select it, and then you want to set it to internal top, external bottom. This may be the other option on other dual screen devices, but for the Thor, it's this one. Then I prefer to turn on Keep DS Aspect Ratio to avoid any stretching. I also like to personally turn on integer scale for accurate pixels, but both of these are personal preference, and I'll show you in a little bit how we can adjust these and other settings below in-game, which makes it easier to see what all of this does. If you want to see how games are running, turn on FPS counter position. Scroll down and you want to turn on conservative coverage fix, and set the coverage expand to 150, and then apply to repeat. What this does is fix the black lines issue in Pokemon games, but unfortunately we can't set this on a per game basis. Now, I haven't seen it have any negative effects in any other games, so I think it is safe to apply globally, but if you do see any graphic issues in anything, just come turn this off to double check. I've had this on for months, playing a ton of different games, and so it seems okay to me, but you might run into something different. Back out. Head over to audio. If your device has a microphone and you want to use it in games, change microphone source to device microphone, and then allow the permission pop-up. Back out. Let's head over to input, and then into key mapping. Now, it might have been done automatically for you, which is great if so, but let me show you how to map controls in case the buttons weren't mapped correctly or it didn't map at all. If there's a mapping already, you will have to click the X on the right to clear it. Otherwise, it will double up inputs. It doesn't overwrite. Then just go one by one, mapping a Nintendo DS controls to your handheld or controller. For left, right, up, and down, I map the D-pad first, and then, without clearing it, I map the left stick on top of it. If you never want to use the left stick, you can ignore this, but I like having the option of either using a left stick or the D-pad. Then we get to the hotkeys, and for pause, I use my device's back button. You may want to use L2 if you don't have one. For fast forward toggle, I use R2. For toggle microphone, it is up to you, but L3 could work. For swap screens, you could use R3. And that is all that I personally map. There is no combo hotkeys as of right now, so we just have to be picky on what we use for each hotkey. Back out. If you're using a handheld or controller, click soft input behavior and change it to always invisible so that it removes the on-screen controls at the top. Back out and into RetroAchievements. If you use RetroAchievements, you can log in here with your information. Back out, and we'll talk about cheats in a little bit. So back out all the way to the main menu, and then push and hold on a game and choose details. You can also choose the settings cog on the right. Under configuration, this is all per game settings. So you can set the microphone source to something else. You can enable HG Engine Fix, which is for HG Engine Pokemon games. You can set the renderer for this specific game, or the upscaling, the shaders, the controls, and so on. For any games that require a Game Boy Advance slot, you can select that too at the bottom. If it's a Game Boy Advance ROM that's needed, click GBA ROM path, then navigate to the Game Boy Advance ROM. And then for save path, navigate to where the Game Boy Advance ROM save is. On the next tab, you have your RetroAchievements at a glance. And lastly, since MelonDualDS has offline RetroAchievement support, you can see if you have any pending offline achievements to sync. You can click Sync Now if you do. Alright, click Play top right to start the game, or from the game grid or list, just tap a game. You can now play, but if you swipe up and hit the back arrow, or back gesture, or back button on your handheld, or if you have hotkeyed the pause button, you can get the in-game menu. Settings will bring you back to the settings screen to adjust global settings. ROM settings will change settings for this specific game only. You can save state or load state, and we'll talk about cheats soon. But for dual screen devices, as promised earlier, click Dual Screen Presets. We set this up earlier, but now you can toggle and see what each option does with a game in the background. We can now head into Fill Area options, and this lets you stretch either height and width on each individual screen individually. I don't use this personally. For vertical alignment options, which may be slightly cut off, you can set where these screens are in their display. So I prefer center, but some might want the top on bottom and bottom on top, and so on. Reset mimics turning the game off and on, and exit exits the game. Alright, now let's cover some advanced features, starting with RetroArch Shaders. Head back to Settings, and then Video, and if you want to use RetroArch Shaders, you are going to need to use Vulkan as the renderer, and then set the filter to RetroArch. In RetroArch, you'll have to set your video shaders directory to somewhere on your internal storage or SD card. So you can create a folder just called Shaders, and then choose to use that folder in RetroArch. Just go all the way up till you see Storage Emulated 0 for internal storage, then choose the Shaders directory, and then use this directory. Head to Online Updater and update shaders. When it's done, back to Configuration File, save current configuration, and then exit. In MelonDualDS, change RetroArch Shader root to that shaders folder that we just created. And then in RetroArch Preset Path, you want to select the shader that you want to use. Boot up a game and enjoy your shader. While we're here and we have Vulkan enabled, you can also now use custom drivers with MelonDualDS. With Vulkan enabled, scroll down to Vulkan driver, and this only applies to Snapdragon devices. But with your own custom driver, either from Mr. Purple's Turnip drivers or Kimchi or somewhere else, you can choose Import Custom Driver, navigate to it, and then select your custom driver. And then under Adreno Vulkan drivers, just make sure it's selected to use it. Theoretically, this should help improve performance and compatibility in games, which you wouldn't imagine is needed for DS games, but hey, improvements are improvements, why not? Next up is DSiWare Games, and for these, you're going to need BIOS files, which, like ROMs, I can't help you get, as well as DSiWare Games, which, same reason. DSiWare Games cannot be zipped, so make sure that you unzip them if you have them zipped. I would create a BIOS folder inside of the ROMs folder, and then a DS and DSi folder. Inside of the DS folder, you want to put the DS BIOS files, which are bios7.bin, bios9.bin, and firmware.bin. Inside of the DSi folder, you'll need to put the DSi BIOS files, which are bios7.bin, bios9.bin, firmware.bin, and NAND.bin. Despite the fact that the names of each are the same, the BIOS files are entirely different for both DS and DSi, and so that's why we separate them into different folders. Then open MelonDS and head to Settings and then System. Head into Custom BIOS and Firmware. For DS BIOS directory, select it and then navigate to your BIOS folder and then the DS folder. For DSi BIOS directory, select it and then navigate to your BIOS folder and then the DSi folder. You'll know that you've done it correctly if there's no yellow or red triangle error on the right. Head back to the main MelonDualDS screen and the three dots top right and then DSiWare Manager. Click the plus icon bottom right and then choose from ROM list. And you should now see your DSiWare games. Choose the game to add it to the list. Now head back to the MelonDualDS main screen and launch your game. Let's do cheats now. So head back to Settings and then Cheats. There is an awesome cheat database on GBA Temp, so let's grab that. Scroll down to download and then grab it from the mega link. It'll take some time to download. It is going to download as a zip, and you're going to need to extract it using any file manager. Now let's head back to MelonDualDS and enable cheats. Then click Import Cheats. Head inside of the folder that we extracted, cheat databases, and then select the XML file inside. It's going to import a whole bunch of cheats for MelonDualDS. To use them, when in a game, open the in-game menu and then choose Cheats. And you can now enable or disable cheats as you need them. Let's talk about widescreen codes next, and this mostly just applies to dual screen devices. So single screen devices can skip this, unless it's a single screen game. Widescreen codes convert the game from the original aspect ratio to 16:9. Head to Settings, Input, Layouts. Click the plus icon top right to create a new layout and then delete the red screen. Just select it and then push delete. Select the blue screen and then change the aspect ratio to 16:9. Go ahead and drag the width to extend the blue to cover the 16:9 screen. Use the device's back button, swipe up and hit the back arrow or back gesture to get the menu, and then choose Save and Exit. Call it 16:9 and then do not select it in the list. Head to Settings and then Cheats, and enable cheats if it wasn't already enabled. You can find the widescreen cheats on GBA temp within the thread. Just scroll and find the game that you want and make sure that you're on the right region tab that matches your game. So USA for USA games. A lot of games have a 16:10 option, while some will have a 16:9 option. That's what we want here. I will show you how to convert 16:10 codes to 16:9 as well in a bit. So go ahead and copy the code for 16:9 for the game that you've chosen. Don't include the actual 16:9 widescreen line though. Open the game in MelonDualDS, open the in-game menu, and then head to Cheats, and then click Create Folder, bottom right. Give it a name or just leave it as My Cheats. Then head into the folder that we just created and click the Create New button, bottom right. Call the cheat name 16:9. Now I did have an issue on the Thor where the keyboard wouldn't show up, but minimizing and coming back to MelonDualDS made it work. You can ignore description, and then in code, paste your 16:9 cheat code in there, and then click Save. Go ahead and select the 16:9 cheat to use it. Exit the game, and now push and hold on the game and choose Details. Scroll to Layouts, and you want to select the 16:9 layout. We're doing this so it only applies to this specific game. Start the game and open the in-game menu, then choose Dual Screen Presets and change it to Disabled. Unfortunately, this is not a per game setting, so when you go back to play a normal game without widescreen, you will have to re-enable this again. Otherwise, enjoy your 16:9 game. Now, if you want to convert 16:10 codes to 16:9, just follow all of the same steps as above, except with the 16:10 code. Once you paste the 16:10 code, you want to change the following within the code. Anything that says 199A to 1C72. You might have to do this several times as 199A might appear multiple times in a cheat code. Otherwise, it's all the same steps as before. Last for today is Syncthing, and MelonDualDS is fully compatible with Syncthing to sync across devices. Depending on where you chose to generate your saves and state files, you would either sync your NDS ROMs folder, or that for your ROMs and your MelonDualDS folder that you created earlier. Unfortunately, settings are not syncable, so you will need to reset up MelonDualDS on other devices, but your saves will carry over. That should be just about it for today. We went over everything and anything that I could personally think of, and you should now be able to do anything that you want in MelonDualDS using today's guide and the different timestamps. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about retro gaming, and hope you all have a good one.